Welcome to Wednesday with Dad, and this begins a series of occasional postings that features stories that my father told. Tonight's stories are stories my father told me about his contribution to raising Cousin Johnny. Now, most of you have never met Cousin Johnny. He is today in his 60s. He's tall, broad-shouldered, has a handlebar mustache, and looks every inch the Texan he has always been. But when he was born, back in the 1940s, he was my grandmother Barlow's very first grandchild, and therefore the apple of her eye. He was also, according to her, the smartest child ever born. Now, my father could be kind of a character at times, and as Rose might remember, and he set out to prove that perhaps Johnny wasn't the smartest child ever born. So he would lie on the couch at his mom's house when he was visiting. She'd be praising little Johnny and how bright he was as the child played around on the floor. And my father would say, Johnny, go hit your head on the wall. And Johnny would go hit his head on the wall. And my father would say, well, he can't be that bright if he keeps hitting his head on the wall. Here is another story about raising Johnny that my father told. He would often take Johnny for walks in the neighborhood when he got a little bit older. They palled around quite a lot. And one day, Johnny asked how they managed to get Hedges so even. They had just gone past a neatly trimmed hedge, and little Johnny wanted to know how the hedges grew to such a uniform shape. Now, of course, my father could have told him that that requires a lot of trimming, but that didn't make a very good story, and so my father told him a story about that. According to my father, when the hedges were planted, they were planted as seeds. And first they dug holes for the seeds and measured them very carefully to make sure that they were exactly the same depth. Then 3 or 4 individuals, each holding a seed, at precisely 4 feet above the ground, would stand over the holes. They would count down 3, 2, 1, and then drop the seeds at exactly the same time into the holes and cover them up with exactly the same amount of dirt and water them in exactly the same amounts. And with the result that when the hedges grew up, they grew up exactly the same and were always exactly the same height. Perhaps that's not entirely true, but certainly a much more entertaining story than trimming the hedges, which is a household task I always hated. So this has been the first installment of an occasional series about stories my father told. I'm going to include them because they're pretty good stories and they're family history, and I don't think they should be lost forever. So stay tuned. Especially stay tuned to this channel, Family the Gathering. Every weekday, a new host, a new video, but always awesome. See you next week.